were able to explain to ourselves the importance and significance of management and the Department of Finance, together with every other department. So today, talk about the types, sources, and applications of fund. Now, when we are talking of the type of fund, sources of fund, and application of that fund in the business arena, yes, every business venture that take a serious working, it is a fashion person, and that person will never want to be associated with any other person because it is always for lose. So to achieve uncommon result in any business, vocations or career, not avers or form source outside your personal keeps. Now, estimating the financial needs of a business. In starting a business, the most important thing that needs to be given attention is the finance. Money is the basis for any sort of business, and of getting this money limited in terms of small-scale business. Unlike in the case of large-scale business, who raise their money from either we need to know is the usage of that word capital, because the money you have sourced for is regarded as capital. And in ordinary business sense, capital means the amount of that money that provide for the purpose of starting a business. So capital as a fund employed in financing business operations, which also refer to as capital as asset needed to be operate a business. So if you use money or capital to buy an asset that will be useful in the operation of that business, it can be regarded as a capital. And capital might mean different things to different people. It depends on the concept in which the word capital is used. In the economic sense, capital to an economist means a factor of production. So therefore, the word capital might not be easily used, but rather be conceptually within the content it could be used. So in a new business, you need to identify the following as the needs for the business before you could start the business. What are those things? The capital to cover the initial cost of the business. Then the capital to invest into the fixed assets like machineries, motor vehicles, equipment, or buildings, among the other ones. Then we have working capital as well. When we are talking of this working capital, it covers all the expenses like salaries, repairs, daily runnings of the businesses. Are we getting it? So then we have what they call a capital reserve. The capital reserve means the money that are meant for the exigencies or for the rainy days, as always terms. Now, the types and source of fund for business. In investment decision, we need to now comparing and evaluate of these opportunities such that the selection of these opportunities will be based on the availability, characteristics, and the cost of the sources of that fund for the business, which are based on the following: short term, medium term, or long term. The sources, the basic sources of the fund for any business entity can be regarded as short-term fund. Is the money which is used for the running of the day-to-day activities of a business. Therefore, the short-term source of finance or fund are those type of funds that are needed to finance the shortage in the working capital of a business. So these funds should not be used for long-term investment. Then bank credit. And basically, these bank credits are a kind of overdraft. Then we have commercial and the trade credit. Then we have the inheritance. Then we have factoring. Now, when you are talking of the loan from the friend, a close friend, a far friend can borrow money from one another. And good and reliable, they are good. Their friends or relatives to start a business by contributing to fund for the business. Such fund, therefore, is invested and business becomes successful. In this regard, these sources of fund might spell dooms for the what? For the business, particularly if the business is successful. So at times, at no notice, a friend or that relative, out of the jealousy, may demand for the refund of their money, which might cause a closure of the business. I think you understand that. So if you borrow money from your friend, and probably his own business has not been grown like that of the one you newly used his money for, with the jealousy and the enviness, so you might come over that, Mr. Man, I need my money. That is friend for you or relative for you. Then number two is bank credit. And when we are talking of the bank credit, that is otherwise called a bank overdraft, because it's a way of obtaining short-term funds from the bank in form of overdraft, because overdraft arrangement is quite different from that of normal loan. So a bank can enjoy an overdraft, or rather a business entity can enjoy an overdraft depending on our relationship with the bank and how the business account has been operating over time. So the overdraft is a privilege that the bank grants to each customer to overdraw its account over or more than the balance the person is having in the what? In his account. So as the money is coming to the account, the bank will be taking their own money back. That is a bank credit or bank overdraft. Then commercial or trade credit. Yes, a business that has good reputations, human relations, connections, could be good or could have a kind of good and services rendered to it by a bigger company by supplying it with goods and credit or with part payment. In such case, it is more like more money has been put into the what? Into the business by bigger companies. So in advanced country, there are more trade credit varieties like trade acceptance and promissory note. In this regard, certain volume of the goods that you are into will be given to you on credit. So as you are now selling it, you will be remitting the money back to where you have been given the materials or the stock. That is another source. Inheritance or bequeathment. These are just the entitlement of materials, money inclusive, that a person receives as part of the property of his parents or relatives who may or may not have died, to serve as the sources of fund for the start of his business. So it is not incumbent on the benefactor to invest the said entitlement in business, but it is another way in which people could raise funds to start a business. Factoring. Now, when we are talking of this factoring, is a situation whereby a debtor of a company account could be bought over by, say, a bank or a subsidiaries at a percentage such that the company enjoy the leverage of, say, 5%. Okay, what are we talking about here? It's just like Mr. A is owing Mr. B money, like 2 million naira. And it has been almost a bad debt, that is a debt that may hardly be recovered. So now Mr. Z can now decide to woo Mr. A that, okay, this 2 million naira, what if I give you 1.5 million? Are you getting it? So if I should give you 1.5 or 1.7 naira, the ownership of that debt will now be shifted to Mr. Z. So Mr. Z will now pay money to Mr. A. So with the document signed, so Mr. B will now agree that, okay, he is now paying to Mr. Z, not Mr. A anymore. That is factoring. So we use that one as well to what? To serve as sources of fund. Then we have the medium term of sourcing of fund for business. This period is not that short or long enough for sources of fund to mature for repayment. The period bridge the gap between the short and the long period to finance businesses that could not fit into short or longer gestation period. So the sources of funds that fall under this period as follows. We have a bank term, that is a loan from the bank. Then we have a venture capital. Then we have a project finance. And at the same time, we have a equipment leasing. Now, when we are talking of the bank terms loan, this is a bank loan that which might be like that of our overdraft, but this has a long gestation period. That is, it is long maturity period for repayment of the capital and the interest. So the interest charge on the bank terms is bigger than that of the overdraft. That is just the difference and the period. And its security for the bank loan, its security collateral is also higher than that of the overdraft. It is only account that serves as a security for that of the overdraft. But on the bank term loan, the bank's scrutiny of the business under this loan is more stringent. Is more stringent than in the ordinary loan. Now, venture capital. These are just money that are used in venturing into a business with a higher uncertainty of the product at initial formulations and marketing of the product. So this money could be called seed money because it is needed to develop a concept of a product or services, just like planting seed into the soil to produce the required grains once it germinates. Now, project finance. Under this source of fund, the project is expected to sustain itself without considering the financial standard or standing of any of the borrower of the fund. So once the fund is borrowed to start the business, it is the business that pay back the fund from the proceeds of the business with the interest of the loan, and also the profits to the owner of the business too. Now we have the equipment leasing. Yes, the equipment leasing, on the other hand, this is a particular method of financing the business whereby the equipment for use the lessee that require to pay the value of the equipment for a determined period of time. So leasing agreement is done in such a way that the business, that is the lessee, choose the equipment it wants to use for the business, and these equipment are bought by the lessor. I think you can understand that. Long-term is a source of or a period as long as years or more. And the long-term financing, in most cases, are used to finance the fixed and current assets of the business. And the main source of long-term fund are as follows. We have the equity capital, we have the ordinary share capital, we have the debenture stock capital. Now, the holder of the share in the company are the owner of the business. So the shareholders have right ordinary share equals in the company and cannot reclaim or redeem their shares except by the right of selling. So the ordinary shares could be in form of preferred or preferred ordinary shares, and the preferred ordinary shares has a fixed dividend, while that of diva ordinary shares is that person who takes his shares of the profit of the companies last after all other claims must have been paid. Now we have our debenture stock capital. Under this, the debenture share capital is a long-term loan which could be secured or unsecured that a business might obtain to finance a long-term matured business. And these debentures represent the document which acknowledge the indebtedness of the company. So the debentures could be redeemable or irredeemable. It is called irredeemable when a redeemable debenture is that occur, which on the other hand, an irredeemable debenture is on which is repayable only in a situation of contingencies. That is when the business is winding up or going bankrupt. So that is that on that. Now, ways of sourcing or raising funds for running a business. Under this, every step in an organization, development of a business, every mature manufacturing or service operation, and every marketing activities require the use of funds. In one way or the other. So the cost of the land, buildings, tools, and even equipment or materials or everybody, even the taxes, the electricity bills, they are paid for with the fund. So many business persons underestimate the amount of fund required to put the business on a profitable basis. So the little or no knowledge of the best way to source for fund causes failure sometimes. And these failures to appreciate or ascertain the financial requirement as well as the best possible means of sourcing for fund has been the chief causes of the business failure. So sometimes when you borrow money from the friend, of course, we have different type of friend. That when you borrow money from them, depending on the closeness, it is when that your business has boomed, that is when the person will now come over and say yes. Or when you are crony rather, that is when the person will now come up that Mr. Man, give me my money. And that is exactly when the most important time or period at which you needed that money. So that will cause a failure for a business. Now, needs for funding in the business enterprise. On identifying a certified proposal for investment work. So the next line of action is just to determine the various ways of sourcing for funds for the business. So the entrepreneur must see to the proper funding of the business, because too much fund is not heavy for a business, and inadequate fund is also detrimental to the running of the business. So this also anchor on the fact that excess fund raised will lead to the capital asset. In this regard, it is not unlikely that some of these assets will be idle or suffocations of the working capitals or operations. Now, classification of the sources of fund. We have the traditional source. We have the traditional source of classification. This means it's a source that comes from the following: self-financing. When we talk of the self-financing, that is an original source of financing from the personal savings. Maybe you are a salary earner of 25, you now decided to be where you are. You want to be on yourself. You want to be lonely. You want to start your own personal business. Are you getting it? So you have been working with somebody and you are earning 25 or 30,000 naira. You now decided to be keeping like 10,000 naira from that money. So when you now work for a reasonable period of months or year, you now decided to start up your own business. So the money that you have been saving all this while is regarded as self-financing or finance. That is from your personal savings. People to people's lending. This one is the same thing as when you borrow money from your friends and relatives or family. That is people to people's lending. It's a what? It's traditional. Then we have the grant. When we talk of the grant, government do give grant. An NGO give grant. And grant is a type of money that one can use to start a business, which does not require the repayment. And the government also give grant. Federal government, state government, some agencies, they give what? Corporate institutions, the private foundations, like Unique Foundations, owned by Dr. Chris. So they give grant. In fact, that is what they are doing of recent. Then Plow Back of the profit. The process of creating corporate savings and the utilization in the business is technically called plowing back of the profit. So it is an ideal method of financing special working capital needs of an enterprise. Let me explain further. When we are talking of plowing back, You started business with 250,000. You now apply that. So the materials you have used, or the product you have used 250,000 naira to, that brought 310,000 naira. So by the time you now take 310,000 naira to produce such it, you will discover it will now be multiplying the profit. That is a plowing back of the product. Then we have the institutional source. Yes, when we are talking of this, the main institutional source of raising capital by an enterprise. That's when we talk of the stock exchange. An entrepreneur can finance a business by getting investors to purchase stock in the company. So there will be legal problems if it were offered to the general public. So a partnership can form, or perhaps a venture capitalist could provide funds if the business venture plans were sound enough. So there are some early stage investors called angel investors who invest in the startup enterprises. Friends and relatives can also loan money. So that is that. Then we have the bank loan. I've explained that it's the same thing as that of the bank credit. Then insurance company, they have also made a great contribution in providing capital to business enterprise, because insurance company is non-financial institutions. So, and the companies invest their capitals in the shares and the ventures of the business enterprise. I think that is taken. Now, the next chapter is chapter 7. That is the definition of the capital and information. Yes, we have been talking of money all this time. And we claim is regarded as the capital. In every society, named one form of capital or the other. So if not all, at least to develop in its economy. So the economy can fall ahead without making adequate arrangement in its capital formation. According to the Levazic of 1982, he defines capital as the accumulation of the wealth that must be combined with other factors of production. So in the same light, the meaning, what I think that is the meaning of the capital formation. That is meaning of the capital life. Now, in both developed and the development countries, emphasis is laid on the formation of the capital as the critical determinant of the economic growth. So there is no society that is direct and hold resources into the productive sectors. But however, part of it directed to the formation of the capital goods that will be further channeled into the further productions. So this type of capital goods includes tools, machines, plant and equipment. That means the business has to postpone or defer our present consumption in favor of the accumulation of the capital to further increase and expand our consumable goods in future time, such that our income will be able to increase. Now, the importance of capital formation. Is a principal factor in the economic development. And most economists, they believe that the physical cycle of the poverty can be broken with the formation of what? Of capital. This is the belief that the formation of capital leads to the full utilization of the available resources, and it increases the output, income, and employment, which will solve the problems of inflation, balance of payment deficit, and relieve the country of the burden of foreign debt, and a better domestic commerce. So those are the importance. Now, what are the sources of, if we want to formulate or we want to form capital, what are the sources of capital formation? it could be seen in the increase of an income to the people. And this can be done by the capacity utilization of the resources of the society, of the country, in an efficient manner, by utilizing unused resources productively through the increase in the division of labor. And the capital formation is also the breakdown of the company's capital structure, rather, is also the breaking down of the company's capital formation, because the capital structures of a firm can be purely equity finance or various combination of the debt and equity finance. So when making this decision of forming a capital, so certain factors have to be considered. Yes, we need to look at the ratio of the debt to equity, nature of the business, the size of the business, the period of the finance, and the cost of the capital. Likewise, the purpose of financing. So they are the factors that have to be considered whenever we want to form a capital rather. Now, the type of capital fixed and circulated working capital. Yes, the appetite of every organization for capital is understanding the nature of the capital and its of effective allocation, which is very essential to the organizational success. So if challenged about the prime motive of the profit maximization, most business people, they look doomed, funded. So they used to say, and it has always been the way. But business, as we know today, is only 200 years old. Today, capitalism was conceived by a small handful of 18th Enlightenment philosophers that inspired by Newtonian mechanism. That is the third ideal of the capital, which was solely material capital, and that one is measured in the monetary way, or the financial value. So the challenge are to be described: which project or acquisition gets scarce capital, the challenge with the type of capital. Now, management of the fixed capital. It is said that fixed assets constitute fixed capital. They are land, plant, machineries, or can other be called a permanent asset or fixed asset, which are not convertible into the cash within 1 year. So they fall within the area of fixed capital and capital budgeting. So the fixed capital management is concerned with the problem that arises in an attempt to manage the fixed asset. Now, what are the objectives of fixed capital management? Yes, the goal. That is, if the fixed capital management is to challenge the firm's fixed asset in such a way that a satisfactory level of the fixed capital is maintained, the each of the first fixed assets, long-term assets, must be managed efficiently in order to avoid over trading. Or each of the long-term source of finance must be continuously managed to ensure that they are obtained and used in the best possible manner, since a lot of cost is involved in its acquisition. So now, classifications of working capital. When we are talking of these classifications of working capital, so the type of working capital. When we call it permanent, it's the same thing as that of the fixed working capital, as the word depicts. Is the part of the capital which is permanently locked up in the business circulation of the company asset. And in keeping it moving, every manufacturing company has to maintain the stock of tools and money. If it requires money for the payment of wages and salary through the year, so it can again be subdivided into regular working capital or reserve margin or custom working capital. Now, variable working capital. The variable working capital. I know. Let me quickly rush down. So the variable working capital change with the volume of the business. So it may be subdivided into seasonal and special working capital.
Time up, please.
So in stock. All right.